Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining today. A very warm welcome to you all to today's session. My name is Scott Addison, and I'm a London-based director at the international PR agency Infinite Global. And we were part of the team which worked with Creston Global on this entrepreneur research that you most likely have seen over the summer and the campaign. And the context of today's session. And it's my pleasure to host today's session, where we're going to be hearing from several entrepreneurs themselves about their journeys taking their businesses overseas. And alongside some of the key highlights from the research from the Interpreneur campaign, it will hopefully provide us with an insightful and inspiring perspective on the opportunities and the challenges for today's globally minded entrepreneurs, and how Creston member firms around the world are helping them to realize their ambitions. So we've got just over an hour today, and we've got quite a lot to cover. I'm going to give a little bit of context, a quick recap of some of the insights from the Interpreneur research, which I think provides a useful background for the discussion and the experiences that we're going to hear from our panelists today. Then we're going to have a bit of a Q&A. We're going to hear from those panelists themselves about their journeys, their experiences, etc., their motivations. And then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end with those panelists. And then I'll wrap up hopefully just about a quarter past the hour. So, but let's start, if I may, by having our expert panel who are going to share their individual stories and perspectives a bit later on. I'd love for them to briefly introduce themselves. If I can start with Lisa, actually, and we'll go clockwise on the screen. Please tell us your full name, organization, industry, and what part of the world you're based in, please.
Hi, Scott. So I'm Lisa Robbins. I'm the Chief Executive of Creston Global. When not at the airport, I'm based in London, and I have a passion for going global, not just in my current role where I'm partnering with our firms to support entrepreneurs, but in my own professional life. I believe I was one of those entrepreneurs. So lovely to be with you today.
And then Kyle, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Kyle Pham. I'm the Group CFO of a business called Asian Development Coast, as well as the Grand Ho Tram Strip. We are a fully integrated resort here in southern Vietnam, and I am actually based here in Vietnam, but I do take certain business trips, mainly to Southeast Asia. That's pretty much my story. Thank you for having me.
Great, thank you very much. Jason's next. Jason, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jason Tate. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of a business called Energy and Healthcare International. We're rapidly expanding with a buy and build strategy. Prior to that, I was head of finance of a business called Sinclair Pharma PLC. It was a listed company. When I first joined that, we had 6 employees, and they were all UK focused. By the time we were sold to a Chinese conglomerate, 12 years later, we had 300 employees with offices all over the world, in Sao Paulo, in Seoul, in the US, in all major parts of Europe. So expansion internationally has been a big part of my career in pharmaceuticals.
Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing from you in a bit. And last but certainly not least, Timothy, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Scott. And hello, everyone. My name is Timothy Alupo, and I'm head of operations at Co-Creation Hub. I'm located in Nigeria. However, CC Hub has locations in Kenya, Rwanda, and Namibia, and of course, headquartered in Nigeria. Thank you. It's a pleasure meeting everyone.
Excellent. Really pleased to have all of you as part of the session today. So moving on, many of you will recall that we first took a look at this idea of entrepreneurs, we call them, 2 years ago in a first of its kind study. We have defined an entrepreneur as a business leader who successfully expands their businesses abroad. In essence, entrepreneurial spirits that take a successful business in one country or market and moves into markets further afield, whether that's to the country next door or halfway around the world. Now, 2 years ago, we took a deep dive into the sorts of things that drove those individuals, what attributes they had that made them successful. We wanted to better understand who these people were and what drove them to have those international ambitions, what made them tick, so to speak. Now, fast forward to this past summer, in the latest edition of the research, which I think came out in June, we looked more at the road ahead for these globally minded entrepreneurs. What opportunities and challenges do they see and do they face? And to get these insights, we surveyed 1,400 business leaders across 14 different countries. So a bit of a microcosm of the global business community. And each of the respondents to that survey was an SME business leader, an executive in the C-suite, a founder, a chair, or a partner, managing partner in businesses up to 300 million sterling in annual revenue, and across a wide range of industries. But each of them had successfully expanded their business to another market. So we're able to provide a firsthand perspective on their experience of doing so. So what did they tell us? Moving on, they told us a number of interesting things about their perspective, their challenges, the why behind their expansion, and their views on a few topics that are very timely. Now, we're going to go through each of these very briefly in a tiny bit more detail. But the overall picture, I must say, is clearly one of optimism and competitive drive amongst this group, even amidst what continues to be in many parts of the world a challenging economic environment. Entrepreneurs in general are expecting more rather than less international business expansion. They are keeping ESG top of mind as they do so. They feel that they are prepared to harness the benefits of AI, and they have quite a lot of confidence in their understanding of tax and global tax rules. Surprisingly. So it's a fascinating picture, and which together, I think, comprises a large part of, amongst this group that comprises quite a large part of Creston's client base around the world. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive about what they said. Moving on to the competitive drive piece. Entrepreneurs as a group said that they are gearing up for growth. They are using international expansion to give them an edge over competitors. And why are they doing it? Well, more than half said that it was for growth, as you might expect. And just over a third said it was to get a foothold in other markets before their main rivals. So quite a bit of healthy competitive spirit there. So ambition and competitive spirit aplenty within this group. Moving on, asking them about the benefits that they've seen from going international. They say they've seen quite a lot, actually. Nearly everyone we asked said it had been of benefit overall. More than half of the respondents said it increased sales and revenue as the main benefit, as well as increased profitability. And more than a third said that it strengthened their strategic and competitive position as a result of their international expansion. So clear, tangible business benefits being reported by entrepreneurs from making their moves internationally. Moving on. Overall, I have to say these entrepreneurs are quite an optimistic bunch. A very large majority said that they expect the number of businesses expanding overseas to increase in the next year, which is quite interesting given, I think, the current global macroeconomic climate and context, which we'll come back to again in just a second. But where do they want to go? Well, Western Europe, North America come out on top in terms of target destinations for global expansion. Both very mature markets, but Northern Asia, Eastern Europe, and South America also performed very strongly, with roughly around a quarter of respondents saying that was a priority to look at those markets. Moving on to the risks and challenges. What is worrying our entrepreneurs? What are the challenges and threats that they see in the global business landscape that are keeping them up at night. So coming out on top of that list is adapting how their businesses operate in a new market and dealing with supply chain issues in a new location. It's no secret that global supply chains have been under strain for the past few years for many different reasons. And that is clearly having an effect or has had an effect on our entrepreneurs as well. Now, circling back to the issue of the global economic environment, more than a third say that they view a potential economic slowdown or recession as a significant risk that may affect them. And the impact of technology, always a perennial topic, whether that's from AI or cyber attack, is on their mind too, along with escalating geopolitical tensions in various parts of the world. Moving on to the investment piece and where and how entrepreneurs are raising the funds to fuel this expansion. Well, private sources of capital are seen as a key source, really, of fuel for these global growth ambitions. Nearly half said that they would consider using or have used investment from private sources, including investment from high net worth individuals. And nearly as many also said the same about venture capital or private equity funding. Far fewer would consider or had considered things like crowdfunding or debt, which particularly I find the lack of interest in debt financing particularly interesting. Moving on to ESG, we wanted to ask about a couple of timely topics that are top of mind in various ways. And so we wanted to ask our entrepreneurs about ESG. And in most markets around the globe that we looked at, ESG continues to be a key issue, say our entrepreneurs. In fact, the vast majority of respondents said that ESG practices would be considered as part of their global expansion overseas. Very few, in fact, said they wouldn't consider them strongly at all. And moving on to artificial intelligence, we also asked our entrepreneurs about AI, which continues to be very much at the top of pretty much everyone's agenda in every context. And that's true of our entrepreneurs as well. They say that they are confident in their ability to harness its potential benefits, with 9 out of 10 saying they are prepared to do so in their operations within the next 2 years. How's that for ambition? In fact, very few said they felt unprepared when it comes to making the most of AI-related innovation within their businesses. So again, quite a lot of optimism when it comes to the ability to harness AI. Which brings us finally to moving on, everyone's favorite topic, which of course is tax. Turns out that entrepreneurs have quite a lot of confidence about tax as well. And this is despite, I think what everyone would agree is ever more complex landscape for tax and regulation around the world, but quite a lot of confidence amongst our entrepreneurs. So that is a whistle-stop tour of some of the key insights from the research that was released this summer. For those of you who haven't had a chance to read the report, and there's a lot more we didn't cover today, please do go to the Creston website and download a copy of the full report, which is available freely to everyone. And with that, it's my pleasure. I want to bring in our entrepreneurs to share their stories first up in turn, and then we'll have a bit of discussion at the end. But first up, I'd love to pass the mic to Kyle to tell us his story. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and hello everyone again. Next one, please. Okay, that's it. Let me give you a quick brief of who we are. We're basically an fully integrated casino resort here in southern Vietnam. It's on the coast of a province called Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu, and it's about 2 hours car ride from Ho Chi Minh City, which is the economic capital of Vietnam. We have basically 4 main lines of business. We have a golf course that was designed by the White Shark himself, and we have a casino, as well as 3 hotels operating at the moment, and we also have a property development element in our business. Our owner is actually a private investment fund based out of New York. Why are we here? We actually bought the property back in 2018 for the reason that we believe the valuation was right and that we saw a robust potential for the business. And this is why we made an offer and moved in 2018. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next 2 slides, please. We basically, like I said, we have 3 hotels, the Intercontinental, the Holiday Inn, and the Fusion by Xora. The Intercontinental Hotel is basically in the Sam's building at the casino, and we use that hotel majority for casino guests, whereas the other 2 hotels that we have are mainly for our holiday makers. And we have about 550 rooms in the Intercontinental and roughly about 1,200, 1,300 rooms for the other 2 hotels. Together, at this point in time, we employed over 2,200 staff here in Vietnam. And that number will look to increase in the near future as we build on more hotels. I do have a few other slides, but I will leave it there for our user or our attendee to read for their leisure. But at this point in time, I'd like to run through a few things why we are here. As I have mentioned, we saw an opportunity because gaming is still an infant industry in Vietnam. And we believe that a first or early mover will give us an advantage, not only for us to build hurdles for the next guy coming in, but in Vietnam at the moment, gaming is only for foreign passport holders only. And as an early mover, we believe that there is a strong potential for us to get into the local gaming licensing in the near future. In addition to that, as an early investor in the industry, we certainly could ask for robust incentive from the authority. And over the past 5 years working here, we have seen a lot of strong and robust support from the authority, helping us to overcome a lot of issues. Gaming is, like I said, an infant industry in Vietnam. There is a lack of robust legal framework, as well as a lot of compliance issues that we have to deal with, including AML or anti-money laundering, as well as banking regulatory requirements. So for a business like us, we need a lot of dealing with the local authority. And as such, Creston, the local member firm, has helped us a lot in dealing with tax issue, which I'm happy to walk through in a minute. But at this point in time, I think that's an adequate introduction of our business for the forum today. So with that respect, I will conclude my presentation here at this point. Thank you for listening to me.
Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your story, and looking forward to asking you a few more questions along with the others in the Q&A in just a bit. Thank you. All right, well, let's pass the mic now to Timothy to tell us his story of being an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott. So I'll be introducing Co-Creation Hub. Co-Creation Hub is the largest technology innovation hub in Africa. In 2010, we started out as Nigeria's premier innovation center, dedicated to the acceleration and application of social capital and technology for economic prosperity. We've since grown our physical presence to 4 cities across Africa. Of course, I mentioned earlier that we started out in Nigeria, Lagos. We've moved to Kigali, that's in Rwanda, Nairobi in Kenya, and Windhoek in Namibia. Aside these 4 countries, we also run programs in several other African countries, including South Africa, Cameroon, Zambia, Morocco, Tanzania, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, and a host of other countries. In these countries, we work very closely with stakeholders, including entrepreneurs, civil society organizations, government, and private sector. For us, the objective is to identify and nurture novel solutions to social challenges in Africa. In February 2019, that was when we actually started to expand internationally. So in February 2019, we opened our design lab and research and development center in Kigali, Rwanda, which is essentially focused on innovating for social impact. Then same year in September 2019, we acquired iHub in Nairobi, Kenya. And last year, which is 2023, we opened our co-creation hub in Windhoek, Namibia. The expansion plan essentially is very intentional, and this helps us to realize our vision to be Africa's foremost innovation center. Since establishment, Co-Creation Hub has supported the development and launch of more than 1,100 innovative technology companies, which essentially for us, the idea is to solve social challenges in Africa. These companies that we supported so far, they've gone on to raise more than $150 million in funding. And we as an organization have also invested more than $10 million in these startups. Also, through our interventions, we have created more than 11,000 direct jobs and also more than 45,000 indirect jobs across Africa. As to why we decided to expand internationally, one is for us to realize our vision of being Africa's foremost innovation center, because we believe that having presence in several African countries helps us to realize this vision. Secondly, is for us to grow our ability to nurture novel solutions to social challenges in Africa, and also for us to be forerunners or have the first movers advantage in these markets. In terms of challenges, one key challenge that we typically face when expanding internationally is regulatory challenge. And this is also linked to the nascency of the innovation ecosystem in these regions. I mean, you want to ask yourself, do we have the right regulatory environment that supports innovation and will allow the ecosystem to thrive? Because we as an organization, we are ecosystem and enablers, and you need the right regulatory environment for the innovation ecosystem to thrive generally. And of course, you agree with me that innovation is always ahead of regulation, and there are always challenges when regulation is playing catch up in that sense. There's also the paucity of talent to drive the ecosystem, which for us is also a critical challenge. What you find sometimes is in some African countries is the over reliance on foreign talents. However, to manage these challenges, we typically focus on very high level engagements with public sector stakeholders and identify opportunities to support them in creating an enabling environment for innovation to thrive generally. We're also very intentional in building a robust community of innovators. And typically this will involve a lot of capacity building, innovation support, and community engagement, just to support the innovation ecosystem in these markets, and eventually help our work to thrive in that sense. Thank you very much. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Timothy. That's great. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And last but certainly not least, over to Jason. Thank you very much.
So Enogen's a fast-growing pharmaceutical company. It's privately owned by an entrepreneur called John Ruperai, and he's going through an expansion stage at the moment. We're focused on acquiring heritage brands from big pharmaceutical companies and meeting clinical needs that haven't been well served by the big pharmaceutical companies. And critical part of achieving that is that when we take on the products, we reinvigorate supply chain to make sure that there's good stock in the market and the doctors become confident prescribing the product. And typically what we find is that the doctors discover that there are new needs for the products and that we can get new licenses. Overall, we're able to then grow the product and sell to a wider customer base, and we're trying to expand that strategy internationally. That's a little bit about Energen. I wanted to talk more about my sort of international experience because I've done this in several businesses. If we could go to the next slide, just a few points. That's just a little bit about Energen's current footprint, which is primarily European, but we are looking to expand globally, and that will happen in the next few years. You can go to the next slide, please. So the obvious reason that businesses go to grow internationally is to expand their sales, and this is quite a quick route to finding new markets. If you've got a good product and it sells well and recognised internationally, it's often easier. And this works well in pharmaceuticals because there's a generic need around the world for the same level of healthcare. We also find that by expanding internationally, in pharmaceuticals, it's very effective in reducing the risk that we have for a business that, in Energen's case, has been historically focused on the UK. There's a change in government, a change in policy around the reimbursements of healthcare costs that can dramatically change the margins for the business. So being present in different territories diversifies our risk. We also find that when we get into different territories, particularly because we need a good supply chain to meet these customer needs, the patient needs, we can get access to new suppliers, new manufacturers of the product. We're also able to get hold of talent in the region, and this is particularly relevant to our expansion into Dubai, where we're looking to set up our headquarters. We get access to quality staff from all around the Asian region, and they're attracted to Dubai by the lifestyle. So in the UK, it's more difficult to get high quality regulatory staff with a manufacturing background, just because the UK is not making manufacturing as much as it used to in the past. Whereas we can find those staff, that talent in this region more easily. Once you've started opening sales offices and you started getting a supply chain abroad, you start expanding for your business. That makes it a lot easier to then look for new products to acquire, because instead of trying to acquire a product that can only be sold in a particular market like the UK, we're able to go to the big pharmaceutical companies and say, well, if we buy your product, we'll be able to sell it throughout the world. This is a great message for the big pharmaceutical companies, because they know that you're not just taking a headache away from them for a particular region, you're going to take away the headache for the entire world. So having a distribution platform around the world is really important for opening up those discussions around an acquisition. I've described this as local government support for business, but really what we experience in different territories is there are governments that are very pro-business, and they will encourage the growth of business by providing a lower tax rate or incentives for research and development. Now, Dubai is very good. Everyone knows that Dubai is a low tax environment. The UK is very good for research and development as well. So in certain territories, there's a blend of, if you want to develop assets, you can actually get enhanced relief for developing those assets and spending on research and development. And we have to consider that wherever we're creating new intellectual property and registering it, we need to consider how much support there is for that investment. The combination of all these factors ultimately increases the multiple that a business is worth on an exit. And by multiple, I mean, typically for our business, we see deals done at 7 or 8 times EBITDA just for a basic product that we're buying from a big pharma company. But once you get into a market where you're selling an entire business with a platform, with sales offices abroad, and all that potential, you vastly increase your multiple on exit to 13, 14 times. So it's a great investment from that perspective. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that I've experienced over time, one of these is local market requirements, and often this drives you to change your product or to change the way you sell things. And what I've seen in some businesses, when they go to change the product, they don't really understand the cost of changing that product. And I saw one business that had brought in a new supply chain just to change the weight of the actual product they were selling in a particular market. But it was such a bespoke requirement that they were actually wasting a lot of spare products in creating that fixed weight, and they were putting extra staff in to manage the supply line to actually produce this fixed rate. And what they didn't realise was that they were successfully selling more and more products in the new markets. They were actually scaling up a loss on these products because they hadn't got their costings right on the actual products. Another sort of local market requirement that drives challenges is the way you actually sell in certain markets. How you sell in the USA is vastly different to how you sell to doctors in Europe. A doctor in the USA is very business-minded, very focused on the profit they're able to make in their business, but in Europe, they're keener to hear about the efficacy of the products. They both consider these aspects. It's just how you get the weight right in doing this. And those different selling techniques can modify how you manage your global brand as well, because they become competing forces within the business, because the US has a different focus to perhaps how things are sold in Europe. I've put exposure to competition here because as you expand internationally, you're really pushing your profile above the radar, and competitors can see what you're doing. And this has historically been a big risk for businesses trying to move into, for example, that historically there was a perception that moving pharmaceuticals into China gave certain Chinese pharmaceutical companies the right to more readily copy those products, leading to increased competition. That was an unforeseen consequence of that business in expansion. The increased complexity is a huge challenge, especially if you end up having exotic currencies in the portfolio. Korea is very different in terms of its banking requirements to Sao Paulo. That's just one example of the complexity you might experience. And then the communication, getting the brand message right in different territories, and also just the different time zones. And that's actually where Dubai is useful, because it is centrally based. It's very easy to wake up speaking to Asia and be able to go to, end the evening, go into bed speaking to the USA. A couple of other things: local compliance. Even in Europe, where there's a certain level of consistency, individual territories have individual rules, and it's very easy to make mistakes that can be expensive in penalties or expensive for the reputation unless you're getting good advice locally. But it's also important that that local advice understands the global strategy, particularly when it comes to tax. I often find that you need one firm operating around the world to help you support your global tax strategy. And if that firm's well connected, it has its own offices in the regions you want to operate, or very good partners in the region you want to operate, and they're able to understand the global strategy as much as the local strategy. So you don't have a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. Last but not least, just timing. I've seen people with businesses with very good intellectual property try to open up into new territory. And sometimes they go slowly just to feel their way into the territory. But if that intellectual property is something that is maybe fashionable at the time, or is easily replicated further down the line, they can miss their opportunity to get market share as the first mover in that market. And perhaps in those situations, it's good to be bold. But that's a matter of judgment, but it's just to be aware that when you go into a market, you need to have a well thought out strategy about the pace you're going to move at, and have the investment behind it to execute that strategy. So those are just some of my observations over my time, and that's the end of my slide deck.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Fascinating. Thank you, all three of you, for sharing your stories with us. I'd love to have everybody all of our panelists come back on camera. We'll have a bit of a discussion around a few questions, dig into some of these things a bit more in the last bit of the session today. But I'd love to kick things off actually by posing a question to Lisa, actually from Creston. We've obviously heard three individual stories about entrepreneurial journeys, and I'd love to kick off with your view on why you think that being an entrepreneur, expanding internationally, is attractive and offers opportunity to organizations and people in the world we're in today.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, I think my starting point would be the report, actually, and the findings of the report. You mentioned it, actually. Going global, of the entrepreneurs that we surveyed, the vast majority, I mean, way over 90%, first of all, affirmed the fact that going global, expanding internationally, had been a benefit to their business. So we're not just saying it, you know, it is backed up by that research. So why? Well, we've heard, I think our panelists, our speakers have really explained so many of the reasons, but it does vary market to market, though, that there is some market variance. But the number one, and this continues to be the number one in the reports, is that it's about increasing sales and revenue. And I think it was over half of our entrepreneurs really said it was about reaching new customers and new markets. So that would be the number one reason. But we've also heard a number of sort of client stories today. And that was talking about whether it be accessing new services, suppliers, technologies, innovations. I think, Jason, you're talking about talent. Different markets were opening up different talents to you. And all of that combined together really helped drive profitability. And again, I think it was just under 50%, but another big finding from our entrepreneurs is that it was also about improving profitability. And also it's about strategic positioning. And again, Timothy, I think you said it. You said one of the reasons you were setting up, I think it could have been Windhoek, Namibia, but you were saying one of the reasons was almost you wanted to be, and I think your words were, foremost innovation center. So it's a strategic positioning. It's a market differentiator. And I think just from my own experience, I've also seen clients, and again, my own experience where I worked, is going global can be a bit of an insurance policy. You mentioned, Scott, earlier, the geopolitical world that we all live in. It doesn't become easier. And it can act as a bit of a buffer against localized domestic downturns or market fluctuations. So I think our client panels actually gave us great reasons, but there would be my summary of why I see our entrepreneurs are going global.
Excellent. Thank you. Great way to kick us off. So those are the opportunities and the drivers. And I'd love to talk a little bit more from each of you about some of the risks and challenges. Now, some of you had mentioned a few of these along the way. I think Timothy mentioned the regulatory environment, for example. Kyle talked about the tax complexity, et cetera, things like that. And Jason mentioned a number as well. I'd love to hear a little bit more about not only what any of those other challenges might have been that you didn't mention, and also your approach to managing them. What are some of the things that you did along the way to manage some of those risks and challenges? Maybe Kyle, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, similar to other businesses, for us, coming to Vietnam is, we were looking for better revenue and obviously bottom line. One of the key aspects that we've learned early in the piece is that you really have to understand the local market really well. And as I had mentioned, because gaming is a very infant industry in Vietnam, and there is a huge load of regulatory requirement. Give an example, tax is one. Compared to the region, the tax regime in Vietnam is quite disadvantageous for us as a business to attract global players or gaming patrons, particularly from Southeast Asia, where places like Manila in the Philippines, or even in Singapore or Macau, they offer better tax advantages to the business there. So for us, we would have to find a way to deal with not only the actual tax issue, but also deal with the interpretation of tax laws in Vietnam. Like I said, we actually bought the business back from somebody else in 2018, and we inherited a tax issue where there was an overpayment of about $5.8 million worth of tax. And typically speaking, in Vietnam, you can't get a tax refund. You just don't get it. But I was working with the partner of KKNNC, which is a global firm partner of Crest International. And over a period of 18 months, we were able to manage, to persuade the tax authority, help the company here to change their business processes, revise their tax policy. We obtained tax ruling from the authority, and we managed to pull back $5.8 million of tax credit for the business over a period of 18 months. And that was a very big achievement for us. In addition to that, banking rules and AML requirement have meant it is a real major hurdle for a business like ours. But because we've been able to get so close to the local community. For example, myself, I'm a Vietnamese Australian, and I'm fluent in the language, the culture. So it really helped our business in terms of dealing not only with the regulatory requirement, but also build robust relationship with the local and national authority. And through that particular process, we were able to overcome a lot of issues that our predecessor or the previous owner of the business couldn't.
Excellent. Interesting. Timothy, talk to us about some of the things that you and your organization did to manage the risks and challenges that you faced.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, for us, there were two top risks in that sense. One is regulation. And I mean, for us, it was very important for us to be able to understand the regulatory terrain. And essentially, one of the big steps that we took was, local partnerships. Because again, we coming in from Nigeria into the other markets, we needed to work with people on ground for us to be able to circumvent some of these challenges. And so, engaging with public sector stakeholders, engaging with consultants, engaging with people on ground really helped us to really understand and really, come up with a bespoke approach to circumvent these challenges. Another thing is talent, you see, because when you go into markets like that, you begin to find that the right talent are typically not available. And what we started to do was to even begin to support the local ecosystem in terms of capacity building, in terms of building a community of innovators, bringing them together, helping them to co-create solutions, helping them to learn. And by doing that, what we found out was that we're building the capacity of the local ecosystem. And, for us, because we are a Pan-African organization and we kind of centralize some of our operations. And so in Namibia, for instance, we rely on talents in Nigeria, talents in Kenya to be able to provide certain critical services, you understand, within all our locations in Africa. And, this has helped us to really circumvent a lot of these challenges. The other challenges that we face, like maybe challenges of economic instability, there's the challenges of, even challenges that are related with building the critical relationships with the stakeholders, particularly those in the public sector, because these are very critical challenges as well. But again, finding the right people to talk to at every critical moment, I think it's very, very vital. And that has also been very, very useful for us in building those relations.
Thank you. And Jason, would love to hear, you talked about a number of challenges. You listed a number of challenges, sort of some of the different ways you approach managing those challenges and risks.
Yeah, my experience is that you need to prepare before you go into the market. As Kyle said, the market. You need good teams behind you monitoring that you're not scaling up a loss by changing the type of product you're producing. A good firm of advisors at a strategic level is very important, and that firm needs to understand the local markets as well. You can also get good advice, free advice from your business partners in the territories who've often dealt with similar clients, particularly when you go into a new territory. If you're using a distributor rather than your own sales force, those distributors have seen a lot of the situations before, and they can help you understand it. But it's really important that you maintain that overarching advice, particularly on tax, to make sure that the global strategy isn't upset by local requirements. You have to have an awareness of local requirements, but your biggest tax risks are usually in your head office area. So you need to make sure that you don't. For the UK, it's Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and we have to make sure whatever we do is in line with OECD tax guidance.
Thank you. Fascinating. All right, I want to ask now about, or dig a little bit into one of the aspects that we asked the entrepreneurs about in the survey, which is around ESG, and the extent to which ESG, sustainability, triple bottom line, however you want to describe it, whichever lens you want to use to look at it, the extent to which they did or are affect your decisions, impact the journey you've been on, or how you move into different markets and opportunities. Tell us a little bit about that. Maybe this time we'll start with Timothy. How does ESG play into the journey that you and your organization has been on?
Thank you, Scott. I mean, ESG and sustainability are very critical to our work. We take these factors into consideration when entering a new market. I'll give you some examples. Now, our programs will typically contribute to, local economic development, because when you support entrepreneurs, help them to scale and things like that, of course, you're enhancing economic development in those markets. For us also, promoting inclusivity and driving environmental sustainability is also very important to what we do. We are always intentional about aligning our work with global standards while also addressing local needs. And we also run programs that support the development of clean tech, for example, and other solutions that drive environmental sustainability. We always try to create that balance between the key pillars of sustainability: people, planet, and profit. I think creating that balance is very important to what we do, because we also don't want to make profit at the detriment of, inclusivity, at the detriment of the planet. And so we strive to create that balance. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Jason, I'd love to get your perspective on this next, if I may. To what extent does ESG, or has ESG been a part of the decision-making process on the journey that you all have been on?
It's an increasing part of our decision-making process, particularly as we get bigger and expand further. We have to be mindful of the environmental impact of the packaging of our products, and the amount of carbon dioxide we use in the international transport. But also, pharmaceutical, typically get high margins, but we have to be demonstrating value to the patient base in every territory. And we invest in research and development back into products that may not be hugely profitable for us, but where there's perhaps an unmet clinical need. And that's part of our conversation with the regulatory authorities in each territory, that we demonstrate that we are, as well as being environmentally conscious, we're also looking to help develop new products for patients, the patient base there.
Great. And Kyle, the last word on this one for you. What role has ESG played for you all?
Yeah, it's like Jason, it's becoming more important for us. First of all, I'll start with the customer, because we are running a gaming business. Therefore, we have a thing called responsible gaming provisions. So we look at our customers and we make sure they have the capacity to actually undertake gaming transaction, and it should be a leisure thing for them rather than an exercise that can impact on their family situations. That's the first thing that we do. In terms of the environment, we are conscious of the environment. So things like wastewater treatment, electricity usage and all that. We work very closely with the local authority as well as expert to ensure that we participate and fund initiatives to help drive improvement for the environment. In terms of social responsibility, we also give back a lot to the community. We have a healthy budget whereby we help local community in terms of education, medical supplies, or similar activities. So we do a lot of that as well. In terms of corporate governance, as a foreign-owned business and a large one, we make every effort to be transparent. So we make sure that we comply with the law, and that we demonstrate to the authority as well as the public that we are a transparent business, and that we are, open for visit or discussion with the authority. In actual fact, we take initiative in terms of negotiating or discussing with the authority to find way to improve businesses. We host, sessions to help improve the regional business as well. As an example, we took the lead in creating this thing called regional tourism an initiative, whereby we not only help out the region, we help out other small players in the industry, but we also paid out, we took a bigger share of the costs involved. And these initiatives are being valued not only by the authority, but also by the public in general.
Thank you all. I want to ask about AI as well, and I'm really interested to hear your three different perspectives, because you're obviously from three very different types of businesses, and I'd love to hear examples of what you're doing innovation-wise in that space. Does it excite you? How are you integrating it into how you approach your businesses? Maybe Jason, I'll start with you this time, if I may.
Yeah, sure. So because we're buying heritage brands from Big Pharma, and we're developing those after late stage development, there's not a huge amount of AI being involved in the growth of our business at the moment. Where I'm interested in AI is on, as Chief Financial Officer, is really how as we grow, we're able to have a finance system and a regulatory and compliance system that works across different territories and different languages. And I'm looking forward to AI streamlining a lot of the compliance that goes along in those territories, digital returns, invoice payments, people traveling around and incurring expenses on, so much admin can be saved in the background for our business as we move forward internationally with AI.
Interesting. All right, Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, we're not into AI yet, but we do use a lot of technology. As an example, on the casino floor, we are moving into RFID chips, which allow us to track those chips, and not only from a security point of view, but also from a custodian point of view. We are looking at different kind of system that allow us to actually watch our players or patrons on the floor much more better. Although it is a very expensive investment, but it does help us to prevent a lot of issue, particularly when it comes to cheating and also for AML purposes. So that's one area we're looking at. We also use technology in terms of financial management reporting, similar to Jason. We look for a way to improve our business. Here at the casino, we produce a P&L every day, believe it or not. Every day we have a P&L, and we get so accurate with it that end of month, we only need to adjust probably about 2 or less than 2%. And the way we do that is we built a system, a data warehouse, and then we have processes built through a Power BI report writer. And through that particular process, we automate our reporting. So senior management team, those who have access to this system, can view this daily P&L on their mobile devices or on their laptops. And that really helped us. In terms of casino reporting, for every 4 hours, we get a report from the floor in terms of how many customers we have, where the money's coming from, the win, the losses, the win hold rate, those kind of metrics that we need for our business. For us, it's very important, obviously, because we open 24 hours a day, and we need to manage these metrics carefully, particularly with the VIP gaming, whereby there is a huge volume but low margin, and we need to manage our mathematics very, very well. And to manage these particular aspects of the business, we do use a little bit of technology, but not AI yet. I'm not so sure when we'll get to AI, but definitely we do invest in the technology.
Thank you. And Timothy, as an organization focused on fostering innovation, I'd love to hear what you all are doing or thinking about doing in the future with AI.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Personally, I think AI is really important. I've met people who think AI is overhyped, but if you look at the impact that AI is already having in different spheres of life, then you agree with me that it is something that we need to pay attention to. For us at CC Hub, our focus has been on research to understand how AI can drive innovation and economic prosperity, and also how we can develop AI talent. We've also been adopting AI to drive some of our operations. Recently, we started to test out an AI model that we built in-house to help us curate our policies and, just summarize these policies in such a way that, more like a language model or something like that. However, we are also cautious about the ethical implications of AI, if you see what I mean, especially concerning things like data privacy. I think it is extremely important for us to be able to use AI responsibly. In Nigeria recently, Nigeria came up with what we describe as the National AI Strategy. I know that as an organization, we also made some contributions in, discussions and things like that in coming up with that strategy. And so as an organization, I think AI is really important for us. We're doing a lot at the moment, and we also hope to, expand our approach, leveraging on AI in the future. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Timothy. All right. Speaking of the future, that's what I want to ask you about next, which is obviously you all have been on different journeys that you shared with us, and I'd love to hear a little bit more from each of you about what the future holds, to the extent you're willing and able to share. Is there more international expansion on the cards? What sorts of things are you thinking about as you think about the road ahead? Maybe Kyle, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. For our business, we are not looking at international expansion, in the immediate future. We are focusing on local initiative whereby we believe will deliver the best value for our business. And that is one of the particular issue that we're looking at the moment is to build out the land bank that we have. We need to build more hotels and other infrastructure to allow us to not only comply with the licensing requirement, but also help us to drive business. We see ourselves as an entertainment business, and therefore we need to have, events and as a destination whereby people will come and enjoy, and we need to build out those capacity as we go forward. The other key initiative for us is to seek local gaming. What I meant by local gaming is that we seek approval from the authority to allow us to participate in a pilot program whereby Vietnamese nationals are allowed to visit the casino, provided they meet certain requirements. So those are the two key aspects for us right now. Obviously, both of those key aspects require intensive capital investment, as well as additional manpower. For us, being in a location where it's 2.5 hours drive from Ho Chi Minh City, attracting talent is also an issue for us as we grow and the need for human capital increases. We also need to look at initiative to attract talents and people to our property. So those are the key aspects that we are basically focusing now on the near future.
Excellent. Timothy, how about you? What does the future look like for your organization?
For us, we are looking to expand our physical presence in Francophone West Africa. Of course, we run programs in countries like Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. However, our goal is to have or establish a more permanent presence in these locations. These markets are attractive not only because of the potential to create impact, but also due to the untapped potential of the local innovation ecosystem. And this also aligns with our vision of being Africa's foremost innovation center. And that's it for us at the moment.
Thank you. Jason, you mentioned you're looking toward further international expansion. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Energen recently bought a product that has a distribution requirement in Europe. We're looking to develop that distribution platform now, and we'll acquire more products that fit into that so that we can get a critical mass. Eventually, when we're big enough in certain territories, we'll start to recruit our own sales force. Also, we're looking at moving our headquarters regionally from the UK to Dubai to take advantage of the talent available in that area, particularly on the research and development side, and also the manufacturing support side with our supply chain. Now we've got to be careful not to break what we've already got in the UK, because that is working well. But we are beginning to hit limits on being able to recruit the staff we need there, which is one of the reasons we're looking at Dubai as a regional hub for talent, and also the pro-business environment that the government supports here, which will free up more funds for further acquisitions of new products, but also for research and development globally. So yeah, we're very much on an international path.
Excellent. Thank you. I'd love to ask each of the three of you, Kyle, Timothy, and Jason, to what is the one piece of advice that you would give to other businesses or entrepreneurial types like you and like your organization that are thinking about making a move and expanding overseas? What would be your one quick piece of advice for those individuals? Jason, maybe let me start with you this time.
I suppose make sure you've exhausted the opportunities in your local market, because obviously they're the easy wins.
Thank
you. And Kyle, what would your advice be?
Same, Jason. Same. It would be invest in your local understanding. That means that you need to understand not only the legal, political, economical, as well as the general business, market that you're in, because that can be a major source of pain for you down the future.
Thank you. And Timothy, what's your piece of advice?
Coincidentally, my advice is pretty similar to Kyle and Jason. And I mean, it's build local partnerships. I believe that the success of international expansion is often, rooted in your ability to understand and navigate the local market. And I think the best way to do this is through partnerships with people who understand the terrain. Even if that market is a blue ocean, you still need the right partnerships. You see what I mean? Whether it's regulatory authorities or local businesses. And in several instances, you will need to do some research or feasibility study to understand the nuances or peculiarities of these local markets. For a kind of work, for instance, you will need to build a very vibrant community. I would say that for CC Hub, the community is the soul of our work. And we will typically ride on the community to drive the impact of our work, essentially. So partnerships, it's very, very key. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We do have one question from the floor that I'd love to squeeze in here for maybe one of you to respond to, if I may. The question is, how much of an impact does financial technology make on entrepreneurship? For example, certain software or payment solutions aren't available in certain regions. Would any of the three of you have a perspective on the extent to which that has an impact or presents a challenge on the journey?
I'll take that. I mean, with Sinclair, the expansion was so rapid that we often encountered new requirements in different territories. Having a piece of software that works globally is very important, particularly for accounting. But when you get into territories like Korea, you're dealing with completely different syntax. And it's the systems often can't cope with that, and also you're dealing with local tax requirements with digital tax inputs needed, and not every system can deal with that. So often you find yourself buying middleware, which is something that can translate between the local requirement and the global requirement. But it's really important to have all your finances on one global consistent system. Otherwise, at head office, you can't really keep a track of what's going on. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. I'd love to give the last word to Lisa for today for this panel discussion. We've heard a number of times from Kyle, Timothy, and Jason about the importance of local relationships and good advice on the ground, etc. And I'd love for you to tell us from your perspective, Lisa, about the role that Creston member firms are playing or can play in all of this. How are they supporting entrepreneurs like these three on their journeys?
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. And thanks to all of the clients. It's been fascinating listening to you. Well, I think it's been said. I mean, you need the right advisors in the right place at the right time. And, having knowledge and insight allows, it can really mean the difference between failure and success. And I absolutely loved Carl's example of working with Nam, who's our Creston managing partner in Ho Chi Minh, to get that was it $5.8 million tax rebate. I mean, that's just a wonderful example. And I think think, well, in terms of Creston firms, what I would say is what we know. I mean, we are, as I sort of said, we're the champions of this world. We're the champions of the entrepreneurs. That's where we sit well and where we thrive. And how I think it works for us, our success stories, is that knowledge, it's not just about navigating sort of local regimes and tax regimes and reporting and compliance, all of which is incredibly important. But it's also giving that sort of cultural nuance on how to operate successfully locally and understanding why that might be a challenge from someone from one country who's trying to operate in another. And that's because our firms work internationally. And the other one, and I think Jason, you spoke about this quite a bit, you know, by definition, entrepreneurs cannot be seen as multi-local businesses that operate in silos. It's really important that our firms are connected. I mean, we connect member firms to each other and we connect clients to member firms. It's not just that they understand their local situation, but they understand or have access to people who will understand how actions in one jurisdiction will impact on another jurisdiction. So I think, Jason, I think your example was doing something locally that ultimately will have an impact tax-wise on the headquarter. And so what I see with our firms, a lot of the work that they can be doing is not just advising the client on their local market, but looping back to the other Creston firms and just sense checking, look, this is the advice we're giving. Can we just check that it's not going to have an impact on tax or other things that you're doing, whether it be at headquarter or whether your next step market. So I think it's that ability to be connected globally to firms that are very experienced in the entrepreneur market. These are the clients that they serve. I think it's just about speaking the same language. So I think that's why Creston firms are successful in this area. It is that global, local, technical, cultural nuance combination. That's what I would say.
Excellent. It's a great place to wrap up for today. So that is the end of our session for today. Sincerest thanks to our 3 entrepreneurs who shared their journeys with us, and indeed to Lisa for her expertise and perspective as well. And indeed, thank you to everyone for joining us. It's been a great pleasure to have you. Please do share feedback on the session today. My colleagues are going to put a link in the chat to give us your feedback. Feedback is very important to us, so please do share your views on the session today. And indeed, I think that we also put in the chat a link to the Interpreneur research itself. If you don't have a copy of it and want to skim through it or download a copy of the report, please do so via that link. I saw a question come up about recording. Yes, this session has been recorded and will be shared to all the attendees very shortly. I don't think we have any unanswered questions, but feel free to send those in if you do. And that's it. Just another round of thanks to everyone for joining us today. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks all.